The galaxy stretched like an endless ocean of stars, glowing peacefully in the quiet of the far future. Alien races had lived side by side for hundreds of years without great wars. They built grand cities of crystal, floating markets among the nebulae, and stations where children of many species played together without fear. They had come to believe war was only an old story, something their ancestors told to warn them of a darker age. Fleets that once clashed in fire were now fleets of merchants carrying food, jewels, and music from one world to another. And peace was spoken of as if it could never break. But peace is fragile, and silence often hides storms. On the outer rim of the galaxy, a forgotten listening station floated alone near a dying star. Its crew of tired alien technicians expected nothing but static from the old channels they watched. No one believed anything important could come from such dusty frequencies. But one night, when the red sun bled across their consoles, a sound cracked the silence. At first it was just noise, broken fragments of signal lost in time. But soon the words formed, slow, heavy, and clear. The voices were human, the kind of voice many had never heard before, and the message was short, terrifying, impossible to ignore. The words said, "You've chosen destruction." And the sound of them made even the machines hum lower. The crew looked at one another in fear. They quickly sent the recording to their capital world, thinking it must be a trick, perhaps a pirate broadcast or some strange echo of the past. But when leaders across systems heard it, panic spread like fire through dry grass. Earth, they said, the forbidden word, a planet no one had seen in centuries, a world of stories that children whispered before sleep, a place said to be cursed or lost. How could it speak now? How could it send a message into the galaxy after all this time? Some council members laughed nervously and claimed it was a ghost signal. Some shouted that it was a trap made by rival powers, but the fear in their eyes betrayed their voices. The most shocking discovery came when scientists studied the pulse of the broadcast. They expected it to be centuries old, something buried deep in time. But the data told a different truth. The message was not from the past. It was fresh, it was alive, it had been sent recently, and its energy pattern did not match any known alien technology. Only one answer remained. It came from Earth, and it came now. The words of the old Deathwelders returned to haunt them. You've chosen destruction. Rumors began to spread. Travelers carried the words across starports. Children whispered them in school corridors. Merchants repeated them as warnings before selling goods. Even the most peaceful races could not hide their trembling. The galaxy remembered old stories of humans. That they were born on a world too harsh for most to survive. That their bodies were built to endure storms, deserts, oceans, and poisoned skies. That they were fighters who laughed at pain and bent the wild to their will. These were stories told as myths, but myths now seemed real. The return of humans became the secret fear on every tongue. The council gathered in their grand chamber, a hall so wide it could hold a mountain. Thousands of leaders sat in circles, each representing their world. Their voices crashed together in a storm of confusion. Some demanded immediate war, others begged for calm. Some swore that humans were long dead. But the whisper of fear silenced them more than any argument. One elder, whose face was carved with years of worry, reminded them of history. He said that long ago, the galaxy betrayed Earth, used their strength in wars, and then abandoned them when they were broken. And perhaps this was the price of betrayal. Perhaps the message was not a threat, but a sentence already written. Meanwhile, in the quiet corners of space, ordinary beings looked up at the stars with new dread. The stars that once shined with promise now seemed like eyes staring back, asking them if they were ready for what was coming. The message replayed itself on private channels, leaking into systems that had no clearance. No matter how they tried to shut it down, it appeared again, as if the words had a life of their own. You've chosen destruction. The galaxy could no longer sleep in peace. They listened, and they waited, wondering if somewhere, beyond the silence of centuries, Earth was truly awake again. The hook twisted tighter when the scanners on the edge stations reported something strange. Faint shadows moving just outside their borders, energy signatures that did not belong to any known species, patterns that felt old, but also stronger than anything in their databases. Officers grew pale as they compared the readings to ancient files. The match was close, too close. The technology matched human warships. The ones they swore had vanished long ago. It could not be true. It should not be true. But the signs said otherwise. The galaxy stood on the edge of its peace, trembling in silence. Every leader, every child, Every soldier knew deep down that this was not just a message. It was a warning of something larger, something unstoppable. And though they did not see the ships yet, they felt them, like a shadow standing at the door, and all the stars in the endless night seemed to hold one terrible truth. Earth had spoken again, and this time, the galaxy would have to listen. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was carved into the side of a hollowed asteroid, its walls lined with glowing stones that pulsed with the rhythm of 1,000 voices. Representatives of every known world filled the tiered circles, their shapes, colors, and sizes so varied that it looked like a living mosaic, from insectoid rulers clicking their mandibles to tall aquatic beings shimmering under protective fields, to scaled warriors whose claws tapped against metal desks. The chamber was always loud, but on this day it shook. With fear, the mysterious broadcast had reached them all, and no one could remain calm. Every screen in the chamber replayed the same message, the same voice, the same doom-filled words, "You've chosen destruction." And each time it played, the hall fell silent as if the sound itself carried weight. Some leaders banged their fists on the tables, shouting that it was impossible, that humans were long gone, erased from history after their world burned. Others raised trembling voices begging for calm, saying it could be an elaborate trick, a weapon of psychological war made by pirates or a rival species. Yet no one could explain the energy signature that matched no known power. No one could deny that the message was fresh, living, and directed at them. The arguments grew hotter, accusations fired like sparks, old rivalries reignited as leaders blamed each other. Some said the insectoid hives had engineered the broadcast, others accused the scaled warlords, but each group defended themselves fiercely, and fear only deepened, because deep inside they all knew who had the power to send such a message. At the center of the chamber, the high speaker rose, his thin body wrapped in robes that shimmered like silver smoke. His voice was soft yet strong, and even in the storm of noise, it carried across the chamber. He reminded them of the old history, the one they tried to bury. He spoke of the Deathworlders, the humans of Earth, who had once been both allies and enemies to the galaxy. He reminded them how humans fought wars others could not, survived planets that others abandoned, and built ships that could travel where no one dared. And then he said the words that made the chamber fall still. Perhaps humans were never gone. Perhaps they only waited. Panic rippled through the council. Some demanded preparation for war. They shouted that fleets must gather, that weapons must be upgraded, that if humans had returned they must be stopped before they gained strength. Others trembled at the thought, warning that if the humans truly survived, then no fleet would be enough, that fighting them would only lead to the galaxy's ruin. The debate split the chamber like a crack in glass, fragile and ready to shatter. Far away, in a quiet corner of the council's archives, a group of scholars and scientists worked in secret. They had accessed files sealed centuries ago, dusty records from the last human wars. The files described battles fought on worlds now abandoned, battles where humans stood alone against fleets of hundreds, and still forced surrender. The data was terrifying. Humans had not only fought with strength, but with cunning, turning nature itself into weapons, bending their own weaknesses into power. The scholars argued that if such a race had survived in silence for centuries, they would now be far beyond anything the galaxy could imagine. The thought chilled even the most logical of minds. The council chamber continued to shake with voices, and as arguments flew, reports began to arrive from the edges of space. Patrol ships had gone missing, communications from frontier colonies were delayed or silent, and traders whispered that they saw shadows in the void. Shadows shaped like ships that bore no known markings. Fear tightened its grip. Each report was dismissed officially, but privately every leader believed it. The timing was too perfect. The shadows too real. The silence too deep. In the lower rings of the chamber, younger representatives whispered among themselves. Many of them had grown up in peace, taught that war was distant and forgotten. But now their eyes were wide and frightened. They asked questions their elders would not answer. If Earth had sent this broadcast, why now? What had the galaxy done to deserve such words? What destruction had been chosen, and by whom? No one spoke the answer, but many felt it in their bones. The galaxy had betrayed Earth once, left it to rot after using its power, and now the betrayed had returned. A sudden interruption silenced the chamber again. The broadcast replayed, not on their order, not by their command, but through every screen, every speaker, every device in the hall. The same voice, cold and heavy, "You've chosen destruction." But this time, there was something different. a faint echo behind the words, like another voice waiting to speak. Then it cut, leaving the council staring at each other in dread. If the humans could reach their most secure chamber, could invade their systems at will, then they were already too close, already watching. The High Speaker raised his hand again, trembling now, and his words broke through the fear. He declared that the galaxy must prepare, not just for war, but for judgment. For he believed the humans had not returned to conquer, but to decide, to weigh the sins of the past. His words spread like fire through the chamber. Some leaders clung to them in hope, others cursed them as weakness. But no one could deny the truth. The message was not simply a threat. It was a verdict, and the galaxy waited to learn the punishment. As the council adjourned in chaos, the shadows outside the borders grew stronger. Fleets moved unseen, and in the silence of space, something vast stirred awake. The stars themselves seemed to dim, as if the galaxy held its breath, and in the hearts of every leader, soldier, and child, the same fear burned. The humans were not gone. The humans were coming, and their judgment would not be gentle on the edge of the galaxy. Far from the great council halls and shining capital worlds, there lived an old alien named Varroan. His body was bent with age, his skin faded like stone worn by countless winds. He lived in a quiet village of farmers on a green world that had known no war for centuries. To the children of the village he was just the old storyteller who sat outside his home, watching the twin suns sink behind the mountains. They laughed at his strange tales of ancient battles and forgotten warriors. But when the message came, when the whole galaxy began whispering the words, "You've chosen destruction," the children gathered around him with wide eyes, because they knew he was the only one who could explain what the words meant. Varroan's voice was rough, cracked by time, but strong with memory. He told them of the humans, the Deathworlders. He said he had seen them with his own eyes when he was young, back in the war that the council now called only a story. He remembered the fire that filled the skies, the way entire fleets shattered against human warships, the way soldiers who laughed in the face of death charged forward even when outnumbered. He told them how the galaxy once begged Earth for help, how humans fought to defend worlds not their own. But when the war ended and the galaxy grew tired of them, they turned away, leaving Earth to burn alone. His words made the children shiver, not because they doubted him, but because the broadcast echoed the same truth, the betrayal, the judgment. One of the children, a young girl with bright green eyes, whispered that maybe the humans were just angry, maybe they wanted an apology. But Varroan shook his head slowly, his gaze fixed on the distant sky. "No," he said, "humans did not return for apologies. They returned for justice, and justice carried a heavy hand." He reminded them that the humans had warned the galaxy long ago. They had said, "Do not forget us, do not abandon us, or you will face the price." And now, after centuries of silence, their words had come alive. The children leaned closer, their small hands clutching one another. They asked him if the humans were monsters, if they would destroy everyone. But Varroan only sighed, his old eyes filled with both sorrow and respect. He said the humans were not monsters. They were something worse. They were survivors, creatures born in storms, tempered in fire, shaped by a world that tested them every day. And when survivors are betrayed, they never forget. His voice dropped to a whisper, and he told them that the humans had been silent not because they were gone, but because they were waiting, watching, preparing for the day the galaxy would hear their voice again. As he spoke, shadows fell across the village, not from clouds, but from sleek dark shapes that passed silently high above. Patrol craft from the council, their engines low and their lights dim. Soldiers marched through the dusty streets, their armor glinting under the suns. They came to Varroan's door and demanded he stop speaking. They accused him of spreading fear, of feeding the panic that already gripped the galaxy. But Varroan only looked at them with weary eyes and said the fear was already here, with or without his words, and nothing they did would silence it now. The soldiers pushed past him, searching his home for hidden devices, and when they left, they took Varroan with them, dragging the old alien into the dark hold of their ship. The children cried out, trying to follow, but the soldiers drove them back with cold glares. The ship lifted into the skies and vanished, leaving only silence behind. But unknown to the soldiers, the old man had prepared for this. He had recorded one last message, hidden deep inside his home, a recording the children would soon find. Later that night, when the village was still and the only sound was the wind moving through the tall grass, the children crept back into Varroan's empty house. their small feet careful not to make noise. They searched the dusty shelves, the broken table, the old metal chest, and at last, behind a panel of wood, they found a small device glowing faintly, trembling. They pressed it, and Varroan's voice filled the room once again. "My children," the voice said, calm and steady. "If you are hearing this, then I am gone. But remember what I told you. The humans are not a story. They are real. They are coming, and they will not stop until the galaxy remembers what it did to them." His voice grew softer, almost sorrowful. "I saw their eyes once, the fire inside them, and I tell you this, they are not here to make peace. They are here to deliver judgment." The children looked at one another, fear glimmering in their eyes, but also something else, something like wonder, for even though Varroan spoke of doom, there was a strange respect in his tone, as if part of him believed the humans were right, that the galaxy had earned its fate. The recording ended with a final warning. "Do not lie to yourselves. The shadows you see are not ghosts, they are ships, and when they reveal themselves, the galaxy will know the truth. Earth has returned." The next morning, the children ran through the village, whispering what they had heard, passing the recording from hand to hand. Though adults scolded them and called it lies, the fear was too strong, the words too heavy to dismiss. The story spread, reaching travelers, reaching traders, and within days it left the small green world, racing across systems faster than any council decree could stop. And far beyond the quiet village, in the deep black of space, ships moved in silence, unseen by most, but always watching, their hulls black as night, their engines hidden in the void. The humans were not only coming, they were already here, standing at the edge of the galaxy's light, waiting for the moment to step forward. The broadcast had been only the first whisper. Now the shadows were the second, and soon, very soon, the galaxy would face the truth. The Border Patrol ship Naratha's Watch drifted on its usual path along the edge of known space, its crew relaxed, expecting nothing more than empty stars and cold silence. For years the patrols had been routine, boring, a simple task of checking for smugglers or meteor storms. But tonight, the silence felt different, heavier, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. The captain, a four-eyed reptilian veteran named Dral, sat in his command chair with her knees gnawing at his scales. The broadcast from Earth haunted every corner of the galaxy now, and though no official orders had been given, every patrol officer carried the same secret fear. They were being watched. As the ship glided through the void, one of the sensor officers called out, her voice sharp. She had detected a fluctuation in the energy field, faint but steady. It was not natural. It was not a meteor, and it moved with purpose. The crew rushed to analyze the reading, their eyes darting across glowing screens. The pattern was strange, unfamiliar, but when the data was cross-checked with ancient files, the result made their hearts freeze. The energy matched signatures recorded centuries ago, the kind tied to human warships. The officer trembled as she repeated the words, "It's them, it's the Deathworlders." The captain ordered the crew to stay calm, to keep the signal contained. But before he could speak again, the lights across the ship flickered, once, twice, then died for a heartbeat before returning. The crew gasped. No weapon had been fired, no damage had been done, yet something had reached into their systems, touched their very core. A voice crackled over the comms, low and broken, but filled with weight. "You are not ready." Then silence. The crew stared at each other in horror. They had not broadcast any signal, yet something, or someone, was speaking directly into their systems. Other patrol ships across the border began reporting the same, shadows trailing them, flickers in their lights, whispers on their comms. Some dismissed it as fear, as malfunction. But then the disappearances began. One ship failed to return its status report, then another, and another. Entire patrol groups vanishing into the dark with no distress calls, no wreckage, no trace. Only the silence of the void remained. Rumors spread like fire. The shadows had taken them. The humans were hunting them. One by one. In the capital worlds, council leaders tried to bury the reports, declaring them lies or pirate attacks. But leaked transmissions reached the people. Recordings of last words from crews who never returned. One message replayed across black markets and hidden channels. The terrified voice of a young pilot screaming, they are here, watching us." Before static swallowed the rest, that single line became a curse across the galaxy, whispered in markets, spoken in the shadows of ships. "They are here." Back on the frontier, a scout vessel named Lurith was ordered to investigate the disappearances. its crew smaller, its ship faster, meant for stealth and speed. The captain, an avian with wings folded tight against her body, believed she could outrun anything. She mocked the fear of humans as old tales. But as the Lurith slipped through the stars, her laughter turned to silence. Her sensors detected not one, but hundreds of faint signatures, all moving as one, all cloaked in darkness. The patterns were deliberate, like predators circling prey. She ordered her crew to retreat, to turn back, but the moment they shifted course, the shadows shifted too, matching their path, surrounding them slowly. Panic erupted on the bridge, alarms blared. The ship tried to jump into faster-than-light travel, but the engines refused, locked by a signal they could not identify. The crew scrambled. Systems crashed one by one. Life support dimmed, lights faded, and in the dark of the bridge, a shape appeared outside the viewing window. It was massive, black, its surface jagged like stone yet gleaming with power. No markings, no lights, no sound. Only the endless void reflected on its hull. The crew could not see the whole of it, for it stretched beyond their sight, and in that silence, they realized what it was: a human warship, rebuilt, reborn, alive. The captain's voice broke as she whispered that the stories were true, that the Deathwelders had returned. Then the shadow drifted closer, and without a weapon fired, the Lurith vanished from all records. Its last log sent half a second before its disappearance, a log that carried one sentence: "They found us." News spread faster than any council decree. Smugglers, traders, and refugees carried the whispers across every world. Patrols were not failing by accident. Fleets were not missing by chance. Something was in the dark, and it was not a ghost. The council tried to calm the galaxy, tried to silence the fear, but the more they denied, the more the people believed, because no silence was more terrifying than the silence after a scream. On a cold mining world, a worker pointed to the sky and swore he saw shapes blotting out the stars. On a trade route, a merchant ship drifted for days after its crew vanished, only their cargo intact, their bodies gone. Every sign pointed to one truth: the humans were not waiting anymore. They were here, moving like shadows in the dark, testing the galaxy, reminding them of the message: "You've chosen destruction." And in the hidden corners of council halls, leaders whispered what they feared most. If these were only the first sightings, the first whispers, then what would happen when the humans finally stepped fully into the light? What judgment would follow, and who would survive to tell the tale? The galaxy had lived in peace for centuries, but now every border patrol, every lonely star station, every colony child who looked at the sky, felt the same weight pressing down on them. The shadows were no longer rumors, they were ships, and they carried with them the long silence of Earth, a silence about to break in the high halls of the Galactic Council. The voices of leaders grew louder with every passing hour. Fear had already spread across the stars. But instead of unity, the council fell deeper into chaos. Some demanded action, shouting that the humans were only myths, tricks of desperate minds. Others begged for preparation, whispering that if the Deathwelders truly had returned, then no fleet could withstand their wrath. The chamber shook with anger and fear, yet beneath it all there was something more dangerous than either: denial. The High Speaker rose again, robes flowing like silver smoke, his face pale with unease. He begged for calm, for unity, but his words were drowned out as factions argued. One proud warrior chief slammed his clawed hand against the desk, declaring that the broadcast was nothing more than psychological warfare. He demanded the council shut it down, erase it from every system, silence the words before they spread further, and in his arrogance, many agreed. They thought if they destroyed the message, they would destroy the fear. That very night, orders were sent across the galaxy. Communication towers were reprogrammed, frequencies scrubbed, signals blocked. On every world, soldiers marched into homes, confiscating devices that replayed the broadcast. Those who whispered the words "You've chosen destruction" were arrested for spreading panic. The council believed they were winning against the fear, but the truth was far darker. For every time the broadcast was silenced, it returned stronger, louder, on channels no one could block, on screens sealed in vaults, on walls where no device even stood. Merchants in the crowded ports reported seeing the message burning across their ship displays without warning. Farmers claimed it appeared in the patterns of their harvest lights. Miners deep under the ground swore the words echoed through their comms. And in the council chamber itself, during a meeting where leaders congratulated themselves for silencing the panic, the message erupted across every wall, every speaker, every console. The voice heavy and cold, repeating the line they all feared, "You've chosen destruction." This time, though, there was more. The voice paused, then spoke again with a faint crackle as though carried across eternity. "You will pay for what you forgot." The chamber froze, thousands of leaders staring in horror, for the voice had not just repeated itself. It had changed, it had grown, and no one knew what words might come next. Outside the chamber, panic swept through the capital streets. Citizens ran through markets shouting the message. Children whispered it to each other as if it were a forbidden secret. And soldiers sent to calm the people found themselves trembling. Because many of them had heard the new words too. The galaxy realized the humans were not only speaking, they were listening. They knew the council tried to erase them, and they responded with anger. In the frontier colonies, the warning was taken more seriously. Governors begged for reinforcements. Patrol fleets were doubled. But ships still vanished, still fell silent. Every attempt to deny the truth only made it stronger. One governor's desperate message leaked across the stars before the council could erase it. His voice broken with fear. "We tried to silence them. But they are everywhere. They know what we are doing. They are not just shadows, they are here." The council tried again to hide it. But the truth could not be hidden. Too many had seen. Too many had heard. Across the galaxy, unrest grew. Riots broke out in cities where people believed the council was lying. Whispers turned to chants, chants to cries, and soon entire planets demanded answers. Why had the humans returned? What had the galaxy done to deserve their wrath? Behind closed doors, the most powerful leaders admitted what they would never say aloud. They knew the truth. They knew the betrayal of Earth had been real. They knew the Deathwalders had been abandoned long ago, left to die when the galaxy no longer needed them. And though they called themselves civilized, though they told their children they had grown past such cruelty, the humans had never forgotten, and now their silence was broken. Still, arrogance remained. A smaller group within the council declared that the humans must be weak, that centuries in hiding meant they had decayed. They laughed at the fear spreading among the people. They claimed the humans were bluffing, that their broadcasts were nothing more than tricks. They convinced themselves the shadows in space were illusions, the vanishings only accidents, and in their pride, they ignored the truth standing at their door. But deep in the void, far beyond the reach of council eyes, the humans watched. They studied the reactions of the galaxy, and each attempt to silence them only confirmed what they already knew. The galaxy had not changed. It still lived in denial, still carried arrogance, still believed it could escape the price of betrayal. The humans let the fear grow, let the whispers spread, for fear was only the beginning. On one lonely colony world, a frightened farmer recorded the message as it appeared again across his walls, shaking as the words burned into his home. This time the voice was slower, heavier. "We gave you centuries, we gave you peace, and still you forgot." Then silence. The farmer uploaded the recording before soldiers arrived, and within days, it reached every corner of the galaxy. The people could no longer deny it. Earth was not gone, Earth was speaking. And Earth was angry. In the council chamber, as leaders shouted once again, their voices breaking with desperation, the high speaker lowered his eyes, his heart heavy, and whispered words no one wanted to hear. "We have ignored their warning, and now, judgment is near." His voice was swallowed by the storm of fear, but his words lingered, echoing through the silence between the stars, where human ships waited unseen, preparing for the day when their message would no longer be a warning, but a command. The night sky over the frontier colony of Velvar was calm, stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. Children played in the dusty streets, merchants packed their stalls, and soldiers patrolled with easy steps. But when the suns fell and the dark stretched across the land, the peace cracked. First came the silence. Every comm channel went dead. Every beacon flickered and died. Lights failed across the colony. And for one long moment the entire world stood still. Then the shadows arrived. Massive shapes. Blotted out the stars, silent, unmoving. Their outlines so vast the horizon itself seemed to vanish beneath them. People looked up and gasped, pointing with trembling hands. The ships had no banners, no colors, no words, only black metal that drank the starlight. The council had told them humans were myths, tricks of fear, but every witness knew instantly what they were seeing. These were not myths, not tricks. These were warships, and they did not come to trade or talk. They came in silence, hovering above like predators over prey. Soldiers on the ground scrambled, rushing to defensive positions. Their leaders shouting orders into comms that no longer worked. Their weapons hummed with energy. But the shadows above did nothing. They only watched, and in The silence, the old message burned again through every device that still had power. You've chosen destruction. Followed by the chilling echo, and now the fire returns. In orbit, fleets scrambled to meet the intruders. Sleek alien warships turned their weapons forward, ready to defend their world, their captains shouting courage into trembling crews. But as they approached the black shapes, their targeting systems failed, their scanners filled with static, their engines sputtered. No matter what they tried, their ships became powerless toys drifting before giants. Then, without a single blast fired, without a word spoken, entire fleets vanished, swallowed into the dark. No wreckage, no survivors, only silence. On the ground, the people screamed as the night sky lit up, not with fire from the invaders, but from their own collapsing fleets burning as falling stars. The black warships still did not move, they did not strike, they only hovered, reminding every soul below that resistance was nothing but dust before them. The colony governor, shaking with fear, broadcast a desperate plea into the void, begging for mercy, offering surrender. But the answer came only in the form of the message replaying. Louder than before, we gave you peace, and you forgot. We gave you time, and you wasted it. Now you face the return of fire. Word spread faster than light, across trade routes, across hidden channels. Reports came from world after world. Veldar was not the only colony. The shadows appeared everywhere. Silent fleets blotting out the stars, striking without weapons, erasing fleets with invisible power, leaving cities in ruin without a single shot. Refugees flooded spaceports, ships overloaded with the desperate, but many never made it. Entire caravans of fleeing transports vanished in silence, their last signals. Broken whispers, they are here, they are watching. On one mining moon, workers swore the ground shook as if the very planet trembled under the weight of unseen engines. On a gas world, pilots reported seeing black silhouettes gliding just beneath the clouds, their presence so massive the storms bent around them. In every system the story was the same. The Deathwelders had returned, not as allies, not as myths, but as silent executioners, reminding the galaxy that peace had never erased their existence. In the grand chamber of the council, panic broke into chaos. Leaders screamed over each other, demanding answers, demanding action. But no action came. Fleets were gone, colonies burned, and no strategy seemed to matter. For how do you fight shadows that cannot be touched? Weapons that do not fire but still destroy. One desperate leader slammed his hands on the desk, shouting that they must negotiate, but even as he spoke, the screens lit up with the broadcast, now sharper, clearer, and heavier than ever before. You cannot hide from what you have done. You cannot silence the truth. You cannot escape judgment. The people of the galaxy began to lose faith in their leaders. Riots spread across capital cities. Soldiers deserted their posts. Families fled into wilderness worlds hoping shadows would pass them by. Every corner of the galaxy echoed with the same dread. Humans had returned, and they were unstoppable, not because of the weapons they used, but because of the silence, the fear, the judgment carried in every word of their message. In one forgotten system, a brave scout ship attempted what no one else dared. They slipped close to one of the massive warships, cloaking their presence, creeping like an insect toward a giant, their captain whispering to his crew to hold steady. And when they came close enough to see the surface, their blood ran cold. The ship was scarred, ancient, covered in marks of battle centuries old, yet alive, stronger than anything in the galaxy. And through the cracks of its hull they saw movement. Figures walking, human figures, tall, armored, watching the stars in silence. The scout crew froze, and one whispered what they all felt: they survived. The humans turned their heads, as if they had heard the whisper across the void, and in that instant, the scout ship systems died, powerless, the crew gripped by terror. But before their ship vanished like so many others, one last recording slipped through, one final image captured. The face of a human staring into their vessel, eyes burning with cold fire, and then nothing. When the recording reached the council, the chamber fell silent for the first time in weeks. No arguments, no denial, only fear. The image was undeniable. The humans were not only back, they were watching, and their silence was no longer emptiness, it was a storm gathering. Across the galaxy, the truth became impossible to deny. Colonies fell quiet, fleets disappeared, cities trembled, and above it all, the silent warships of Earth hovered, waiting, the broadcast repeated endlessly, the final warning written in every heart: You've chosen destruction, and now the fire returns. The galaxy, once filled with peace, now lived in fear of the shadows, and every being who looked to the stars knew the same truth. The Deathworlders had come back, and they would not stop until their judgment was complete. The galaxy held its breath. Worlds trembled beneath the shadow of black ships. Colonies whispered of vanishing fleets, and still the Council searched for answers. They had tried to silence the broadcast. They had tried to deny the truth. But now the evidence filled every sky. The Deathworlders had returned. The humans were real, alive, and stronger than ever. Yet none knew what they wanted, until the day one of the ships finally spoke with more than a single warning. It began on the fractured colony of Drelith, a mining world that had seen its fleets vanish days earlier. Its people huddled in shelters, their cities half-dark without power. Above them hung 3 human warships, black as night, their hulls scarred but unbroken. They had done nothing, fired nothing, but their presence crushed every soul below. Then, as the twin moons rose, the sky filled with sound. A voice deep and steady rolled across the world, not through comm channels or speakers, but through the air itself, vibrating inside every heart. We are the children of Earth. You did not destroy us, you abandoned us. The words echoed through the valleys, shaking buildings, silencing every cry. The people fell to their knees, staring upward as the voice continued. You used our strength in your wars, you demanded our blood for your survival, and when we were broken, you left us to die. Silence followed, a silence so heavy it felt like the world itself had stopped turning. Then the voice spoke again, sharper now. But we did not die, we endured, we rebuilt, we remembered. The words pierced like knives, because they carried not only accusation, but truth. Across the galaxy, every screen, every device, every channel came alive with the same message. The humans were not whispering anymore. They were declaring themselves. Old records unlocked. Battles once erased replayed across the stars. Images of human fleets standing alone against impossible odds. Images of Earth burning while the galaxy turned away. Children who had never heard of such wars wept as they watched. Their elders bowed their heads in shame. The truth that had been buried for centuries now stood in the light, undeniable and merciless. In the council chamber, silence fell heavier than ever before. The leaders who had sworn humans were myths now trembled in their seats as the recordings played across the walls. One by one the old betrayals surfaced, agreements broken, alliances discarded, promises shattered, and behind each betrayal, the same name appeared, Earth. They had carried the galaxy through its darkest hour, and in return, the galaxy had abandoned them. The truth could no longer be denied. The High Speaker stood, his voice low and filled with sorrow. He admitted the past. He confessed that the galaxy had turned its back on humanity, and that perhaps this was their punishment. But even as he spoke, other leaders shouted in fear, demanding war, demanding defense, still clinging to the belief that weapons could solve what truth had already destroyed. Their voices cracked with desperation, but no one listened, for the truth was louder than their denials. Meanwhile, on hidden frequencies, the humans sent a second broadcast, this one not filled with anger, but with cold reason. We do not come as conquerors, we come as judges. The words spread like fire. We come to remind you of the promises you broke, of the debts you never repaid, and of the silence you forced upon us. The message ended with a line that froze even the bravest hearts. You will not escape the weight of memory. On countless worlds, people gathered in streets, staring up at the skies, asking themselves what judgment would mean. Some prayed for mercy, others begged for leaders to act. But all felt the same fear. The humans had not come to take resources, nor to rule. They had come to make the galaxy remember its sins. On one captured patrol ship, the truth became clearer. The alien crew, trembling with fear, had been taken alive instead of erased. When their blindfolds were removed, they found themselves in the vast halls of a human vessel. Its walls lined with scars of ancient battles. Its machines humming with power beyond comprehension. And standing before them, human officers, tall, armored, their eyes sharp with fire. One stepped forward and spoke in simple words the aliens understood. We gave you centuries to change, but you did not. The aliens begged for their lives, swore they were innocent, but the human only shook his head. It was not your lives we came for, it was your truth. And then he released them, sending them back with a message. Tell your council we are here, tell them we remember. When the prisoners returned, their words spread faster than any ship could travel. Not only were the humans alive, They were deliberate, measured. Every move they made carried purpose. They were not here to burn everything. Not yet. They were here to weigh, to watch, to remind, and that was more terrifying than war. The galaxy trembled as the humans revealed their strength piece by piece. Worlds saw their fleets vanish without battle. Cities saw their skies filled with silent shadows. And now they knew why. It was not to conquer, but to make the galaxy live in the fear of its own betrayal. On the refugee stations, whispers grew that maybe if they begged for forgiveness, the humans would show mercy, but others said no, mercy was gone. The humans had waited too long, suffered too much. Their return was not a chance for peace. It was a reckoning, a sentence carried across centuries. And in the deepest corners of the void, where the great fleets of Earth waited in silence, a single broadcast prepared to unleash, the one that would not only tell the truth, but demand the price. Humanity's voice was no longer an echo in the dark. It was the roar of judgment rising. The galaxy was no longer the same. Peace had shattered like glass. Every world, every station, every colony now lived under the shadow of Earth's return. Black warships hung above skies without moving. Fleets vanished without a shot fired, and the broadcast echoed endlessly through every channel, every system, every heart. You've chosen destruction, and now judgment has come. The words were no longer whispers of fear. They were reality. The Deathwelders were here, and the galaxy had only two paths left, kneel or resist. In the great capital, the council gathered one final time. The chamber was heavy with despair. Leaders who once shouted with arrogance now spoke in trembling voices. Some demanded surrender, begging to send emissaries to Earth's fleets with words of mercy. Others swore they must fight, that surrender would mean slavery. Their arguments tore through the chamber like storms, but none found peace, for outside, the skies above their own world glowed with the presence of human warships, silent, watching, their black hulls stretching across the horizon like endless walls. The High Speaker rose, his hands shaking, his voice breaking with the weight of history. He reminded them of their betrayal. He told them no weapon could erase the truth. No fleet could defeat shadows that swallowed armies without fire. He begged them to understand that this was not a war. It was judgment, and judgment could not be defeated, only answered. But his words fell on deaf ears. Because the galaxy was divided, fear made them desperate, and desperation makes fools. On one side, planets began to send desperate pleas for mercy, whole worlds broadcasting messages into the void. Their voices filled with tears, promising loyalty to Earth if only they were spared. On the other side, proud warrior races gathered their fleets, swearing they would never kneel, that they would burn before bowing to the Deathwelders. In the streets, riots erupted. Some begged to fight, others begged to kneel. Families tore apart. Brothers turned against brothers. Entire cities drowned in confusion, all waiting for the next words from Earth. The humans, silent for days, finally spoke again, the broadcast cutting across every system in the same moment, the voice deep and steady. You betrayed us once, you left us to die, now you stand at the edge of your own fate. The galaxy froze, every leader, every child, every soldier listening. We will not conquer you, we will not enslave you, we offer you one final choice. The silence that followed was heavier than war, and then the voice spoke again. Each word like a hammer. Kneel before Earth, or be erased. Panic exploded across the stars, fleets prepared for war, planets sent surrender signals, and every being faced the same question. What would they choose, on a desert world? A soldier dropped his weapon and bowed to the sky, whispering Earth's name, on a frozen moon. A fleet captain ordered her ships forward, her voice sharp with pride, swearing she would never kneel. Across the galaxy, the choice split families, armies, and worlds. No one could escape it. On the council floor, leaders begged for unity, but unity was gone. One proud warlord shouted that he would never kneel, and his fleets launched before dawn, racing into the black. The galaxy watched in silence as his ships met the shadows, weapons blazing with fire brighter than suns. But the shadows did not return fire. They only moved, and within minutes, his entire fleet vanished, wiped from the stars without a trace. The warlord's last transmission, a scream cut short. His world fell silent. Soon after, the lesson clear. Other planets surrendered, sending kneeling messages into the void, their leaders weeping as they promised loyalty to Earth, and though the shadows hovered above them, their cities were spared, their fleets left untouched. Fear became obedience, and obedience became survival. But many still resisted, too proud, too afraid to kneel, and one by one their stars went dark, whole systems erased without fire, as if swallowed by the void itself. Among the common people, stories spread of what judgment looked like. Some said the humans burned worlds until only ash remained. Others whispered that they simply took the leaders and left the people alive. A few swore the humans were rebuilding the worlds they spared, forcing them to remember loyalty. No one knew the full truth, but all knew the choice was real: surrender or vanish, kneel or die. The children who once laughed at tales of deathworlders now cried under the glow of their black ships. Mothers prayed, fathers swore vengeance, and through it all, the humans watched in silence, their ships unmoving, their voices rare, but their presence heavier than war. They had turned the galaxy into a trial, and every world was now its own jury, deciding whether to live or burn. In the end, the council collapsed. Worlds chose for themselves. The galaxy that had once been united in peace shattered under Earth's shadow, and the final broadcast came, louder, clearer, echoing through every soul. This is your final dawn, choose wisely, for your choice will shape the stars for centuries. The message ended, and silence returned, but it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of judgment. The galaxy trembled, knowing the Deathworlders had returned not as conquerors, not as myths, but as judges, and every being who looked into the sky saw the same truth. Their fate was no longer their own. It belonged to Earth, and Earth alone.